Final Smashes. First seen in Brawl, they're the Super Smash Bros. Series take on fighting game super moves. Except they're not balanced, the game's not balanced around them, and your two choices for using them are a random item or a meter that's missing most of the things that make meters mechanically sound in other titles. But hey, they sure are cool, aren't they? Big climactic mega moves that leave an impact in more ways than one. And since there's little concern for tuning or synergy, and the attacks can range from a full stage rampage, a giant projectile, a flashy cutscene, or whatever else, a character's final smash arguably has the most freedom when it comes to creating a memorable maneuver that perfectly encapsulates that character and their source material. The sky's the limit! But sometimes these things can't even reach the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, there's plenty of stinkers in there, even in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. For every all-out attack, there's a... what is this one called? Whether the concepts were lousy to begin with, or they're just lame in execution, quite a few Final Smashes do a poor job in representing the fighter and series in question, or like the oomph move like this necessitates, or worse, both. I'd like to point a finger at a handful of those. And since I'm not a complete asshole, I'll even suggest replacements for each one. Keep in mind, though, that I really am focusing on a Final Smash's concept and presentation here, not its gameplay functionality. Sure, Sonic's ultimate attack, it's about as hard as a gnat on a windshield. But why would that guy's Final Smash be anything but a lightning-fast barrage of supersonic? It just needs to do its job more effectively and reliably, and in my opinion, that's not as interesting to talk about. In addition, I'm not gonna highlight any Final Smashes that didn't make it to Ultimate. No point in clamoring for something to be replaced when it already has been. As I said, Brawl introduced Final Smashes, but quite a few of the ones that have stuck around since then have not aged too well. There was a different mentality when it came to conceptualizing some of them back then. While there were direct adaptations, many took a fighter's basic abilities and dialed them up to 10,000. Your mileage may vary with this approach. Sometimes you get a great ether, and sometimes you get the Mario finale. The very first Final Smash ever shown off, and man does it show! You can tell that when they were making this thing, the devs were thinking about its purpose in that reveal trailer before anything else. That moment of,
whoa! Mario just did a huge attack that covers the whole stage. They must be giving characters super moves.
And yeah, it gets that point across. It's also been nearly 2 decades since then. You know, I've seen some people over the years claim that the Mario finale is a nod to the Ultra Fireball from Super Mario RPG. No. It's exactly as I said before. Mario uses fire, now he's gonna use a lot of fire. In a vacuum, it's fine. That flaming spiral is pretty cool looking. But we're talking about the guy with, like, the most source material to pull from. For a replacement, I could pick one of those power-ups or abilities, but why should I? In Mario's new Final Smash, Super Legacy, Mario pumps his fist in the air, and a warp pipe suddenly shoots up from the ground. Anyone hit by it, or otherwise close enough, is sucked down into a cutscene. They land in a cavern, and are attacked by a parade of evolving versions of Mario. They're stomped by Mario as he appears in Super Mario Bros., tail whipped by Tanuki Mario from Super Mario Bros. 3, spin stomped by Cape Mario from Super Mario World, so on and so forth, all done so quickly that you might not process every reference the first time round. Ultimately, Smash's Mario is empowered by the Superstar power-up and somersaults into the opponents for the final blow, launching them out of the warp pipe and towards the blast zone. Before we move on, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Dr. Mario, whose Doctor finale is the same thing but with giant pills instead of fire. Inherently lamer, yes, but it's not like Dr. Mario has that same history to pull from. There are possibilities for him, of course, but needless to say, updating the main man is far more imperative. From the first Final Smash to the second. In Brawl, Link was given the Triforce Slash, and it follows the same template as Mario. Take an element associated with that character and go wild with it. Come on, you know the 4 elements. Earth, fire, water, geometry. I think the Triforce Slash is a much worse case than the Mario finale, though. At least the Mario finale needed to consider being the first Final Smash players would see. The Triforce Slash didn't. Also, the former is carried by its distinct spectacle. The latter is a bunch of sword slashes, but hey, the Triforce is there. You remember the Triforce? Yeah, this is what it does. Luckily, Link no longer uses this wet fart of a move. To coincide with his Breath of the Wild-inspired redesign in Ultimate, he now wields the ancient bow and arrow. Still nothing special, and there were definitely other options with the Hero of the Wild. But this is actually an exceedingly powerful attack from his home game. The problem is that Smash Ultimate has two other Links, and they're both stuck with the Triforce Slash! Young Link, the solution is obvious. Have him transform into the Fierce Deity, his overpowered form seen in Majora's Mask's final battle. It's practically made for this kind of thing. You could still have it boil down to souped-up slashes, sub out the Triforce for this colorful double helix motif, let the Fierce Deity tear through his opponent with heavy swings, maybe throw in a few beefy sword beams, and you're good. As for Toon Link, let's get a bit more into the weeds there, with another cutscene worthy of his home game's memorable aesthetic. In the Great Sea Plunge, Toon Link conducts a quick melody with the Wind Waker, calling forth a tidal wave to wash away opponents in his path. Those opponents are tossed into an arena surrounded by walls of water, which then split open as the King of Red Lions comes barreling towards them. Toon Link leaps off the boat as it crashes into the targets, and as the scene begins to flood, he, plunges downward, driving his sword into at least one of their heads for massive damage. A watery transition brings us back to the stage, where one last wave knocks the opponents away. Obviously, this is only one of many possibilities for this character, and I'm going to be so bold as to say any of them would be better than the Triforce Slash. I hate you, go away. Here's the thing about Rob in Smash. While he does have a few abilities that pull directly from how the real NES accessory functioned, namely the rotating arms and the gyro, he largely uses standard sci-fi robot stuff. And I think that's cool. Taking a weird peripheral that was meant to invoke those creations and bringing that vision to life is a genuinely inspired direction for this character. It works well as an adventure mode enemy and in this playable form. Rob's final smash, the guided Robo Beam, is a lackluster extension of that concept, though. The name and precise functionality has changed, but in all three of his appearances, Rob's finishing move has been lots of lasers. An uninteresting idea to begin with, and one that's just kind of mush in practice. All of these pew-pews, and somehow none of them have impact. It's like that one Force Awakens edit that adds a shit ton of TIE fighters all blasting away. I just realized that's not the last Star Wars reference I'm gonna make in this video. A new Final Smash could pull from one of the few Rob-compatible games, since the software associated with this accessory isn't really touched upon at all in the main moveset. But I have another idea. Over the years, we've seen a couple Final Smashes that reference Smash Bros. Itself. And considering how important this guy is to the Subspace emissary, well, Rob's new Final Smash, Subspace Assimilation, sees the robot don the cloak of the Ancient Minister before dropping a Subspace bomb onto the stage. A pair of additional Robs emerge on either side to activate it, and once the timer ticks down to 0, it explodes into a dark purple void that engulfs and damages fighters within its slowly expanding range. Any fighter with over 100% by the end of the attack is KO'd instantly, while others are merely blasted away. This is a concept so fitting that I'm shocked they've changed Rob's Final Smash every single time and never took a swing at it. So, picture this. You're tasked with implementing a brand new Super Mario character, the Watcher of the Stars, in essence, a space goddess whose original game ends with her resetting the entire universe. What do you do for her final smash? You know what? I got it! How about she summons the most PNG-looking model of a collectible, it sends out a few love taps everywhere, then it explodes, and that's your lot. Ooh. Hey, at least the Grand Star's not actually a still image. That would be kinda cheap and embarrassing as the centerpiece of a final smash. Still, very weak in both presentation and function, considering what we've seen this character do. So, for Rosalina and Luma's new final smash, Big Bang, the latter transforms into a launch star to set nearby opponents into the background, which is replaced by the sprawling canvas of space. The trapped opponents and surrounding cosmos are rapidly pulled inward and compacted into a singularity. Then, it all expands once more, with stars, planets, comets, and fighters careening towards the screen. To make things even more devastating, all of those galactic projectiles become hazards for any fighters that weren't caught in the initial attack. Resetting the universe at breakneck speed just to get one up on our opposition? Now that's a grand finale befitting Rosalina.
And Luma.
Minecraft is a game all about being... it's on the tip of my tongue. And that is reflected in Steve's moveset. Now, let's just say there's serious tuning issues there, but as far as giving players the tools to think outside the box and mold the stage around them to their liking, it does feel very Minecraft. Which makes it such a shame that Steve's final smash doesn't quite hold up to that standard. The House of Boom does have its redeeming qualities. It's cool that it shoves fighters into an actual Minecraft build. It's great to bring in all these mobs, especially the creeper! That last bit of Steve looking directly into the camera eating while all goes to hell is very funny. But the fundamental concept, which comes down to just blowing up the opponent with a bunch of TNT, doesn't exactly scream clever or interesting. Like with most of these, I'm certainly not the only one to feel let down by this choice. I've seen other people suggest a final smash involving the Ender Dragon, usually with Steve riding on its back as it decimates his opponents. But I don't really like that idea either. That's not something you can do in the game. And moreover, when I think Minecraft, I don't immediately think of these boss battles. I think of building stuff, maybe stuff with a bunch of moving parts. Here's my pitch: the Great Doohickey. Steve places down a command block that sparks. If an opponent is hit by this, the text "Set on game mode to creative mode" appears and a cutscene begins. A shadow grows over the opponent as Steve rapidly builds something, and we then see what that is. An overly elaborate Rube Goldberg machine made up of redstone, pistons, dispensers, minecarts, animals, you name it. All of this leads up to a row of creepers being spawned directly in front of the opponent, and you can guess what happens next. Is it silly? Yep. Am I biased on account of redstone contraptions being my favorite part of Minecraft? Definitely. Do I think something like this would be more fun to look at and do a better job of exemplifying Minecraft's vibes? I'd sure hope so. This video hasn't been in any particular order thus far, but the final smash I'd like to talk about is probably my least favorite and ultimate. So, before we go there, I'd like to skim through a handful of dishonorable mentions. In short, other final smashes I'd like to see changed, but that I either don't feel as strongly about, or couldn't come up with a solid enough substitute. Donkey Kong's conga beat was swapped out for the Jungle Rush, that's it! In Ultimate, and it's just a bunch of punches. Yes, I know it's a reference to Donkey Kong Jungle Beat down to that negative filter flash, and I also know that DK does stuff like this in the Donkey Kong Country games. Even so, this implementation in Smash is boring. The Dark Pit staff is another direct reference that ends up being a bit limp for a final smash, especially with how quick it passes by. Sure, it's Dark Pit's signature weapon, but that, along with how pedestrian the attack is, just makes me wonder why it's here and not on its actual moveset. Luigi's Poltergust 5000 made sense in Smash 4, when that device wasn't otherwise present on his moveset. But now it is. So the Poltergust G00 feels sort of anticlimactic. Maybe you can have the attack start the same way, but then Professor Egad shows up to turn the captured fighters into paintings? I don't know. It just needs something to push it over the edge. Jigglypuff's Puff Up is bizarre. It's funny, especially with the old Elden Bridge glitch that keeps Puff in that state. And I get the idea of overinflating the balloon Pokemon and suddenly releasing all that air to blast everyone away. But it's weird and dull. Put a fairy-type move here, do the drawing on the face bit, anything but this. Me Sword Fighter's Final Edge and Wii Fit Trainer's Wii Fit. They're the same thing, and they both make me feel nothing.
Somehow,
I criticize the previous examples for being boring concepts, lacking references, not being the best option, but I wouldn't go so far as to call them cheap or lazy. Some clearly took less time and effort than others, but then there's Progenitor God Ruptured Heaven. See, one of the biggest upsides of going with a full cutscene Final Smash is that you can do literally whatever you want with it. Transport the fighters into a different world, micromanage the cinematography, absolutely no concern for what would make sense on an actual stage. Anything. In Byleth's Final Smash, they perform a relatively unassuming whip attack while Sothis, a PNG of Sothis looms overhead. To make matters worse, Byleth's a DLC character. You have to pay for this move. And I hate to even bring it up, but this character wasn't exactly warmly received at the time. I still see people whinging about their inclusion, so having that culminate in something that comes off as this careless and straight up bad doesn't help. But I really like Fire Emblem Three Houses. I like Byleth and Smash. They deserve better than this. In that regard, one of the first things my mind went to was the Divine Pulse, Byleth's ability to rewind time. It's a major component of Three Houses. It's a gameplay mechanic, it's part of the plot, and it's not represented on Byleth's moveset already. Given how unbelievably powerful that skill can be if you think about it for more than 1 second, 2 seconds, a finishing move is as good a place as any to show it off. To initiate their new Final Smash, Byleth calls upon Sothis, who briefly appears in the background as a fully animated character. All fighters, items, projectiles, whatever on the stage are frozen in place, and Byleth is given the opportunity to have at them as they please. I know these controllable Final Smashes have been mostly phased out, but Bayonetta still has something like this, so... Byleth's attacks on fighters do the damage and knockback expected, freeing them from their stun. But every few seconds, time rewinds, bringing everyone and everything back to its original position, but with opponents keeping the damage they've taken. This happens 3 times in total, and after that final stun period, the opponents are blasted away with knockback relative to the combined attacks landed throughout the entire escapade. Maybe this isn't the most brilliant Final Smash out there. Perhaps there's ways to make it flashier or more impactful or what have you. But you know what? It certainly stands out, it brings in a signature ability from the source material, and most important of all, it's better than... Use my Fortnite creator code DOGGIFU. I'm gonna go lay down. Shoutouts to my channel members, Antis Munchie and Tibby. Your support really does mean a lot.